Hello friends, it is time officially to do my 2024 book bracket. I've created this lovely bracket thing here and I'm excited to figure out what my favorite book of 2024 was. I did a whole heck of a lot of reading and I want to know what I like the best, and this is a good video as well if you're looking for more books to read. I read a bit of a variety of books, from fantasy, romance, to sort of contemporary fiction, mystery, crime, thriller kind of things, and there's a whole mix of books that I think are going to be going on to this bracket. So without further ado, let's get into the book bracket. So, in my bracket here, I've got 12 different slots across the top, equaling to one a month from January all the way to December. And I'm going to put my favorite book from each month in there. And then January and February will compete, March and April will compete, and from there we'll get 6 semi-finalists. And then from there, 3 finalists, and then we will find out my favorite book of this year. So I've gone through and we're just going to be looking at the books that I gave 4 or 5 stars to, just because I don't think it makes sense to go into anything lower than that, because they're obviously not going to be my favorites. So in January, we only had 1 5-star read, which means it automatically becomes the book of the month. And it was King of Battle and Blood. And that's a sort of fantasy romance book with vampires. And it is a very spicy book, and so if you're not into sort of spicy literature, maybe don't give it a go. But I found that the spice in it is really plot forward. I tend to not like spice that's just for the sake of spice, but I didn't find that King of Battle and Blood was that at all, and so it took the top spot for January. I'm pretty sure I read that in a few days because I was enjoying it so much. It just flowed really easily and I was able to read it quite quickly. In February, we actually had 2 different 5-star reads. The first one being Crescent City 3, House of Flame and Shadow. I mean, that wasn't a surprise. I was very excited for the 3rd book in the Crescent City series, as well as Daisy Jones and the Six. And I feel like this is quite a hard one to compare the two because it is so different in terms of genre. I mean, Crescent City is a fantasy and Daisy Jones and the Six is historical fiction, sort of documentary style. And so I found it really, really hard to pick between the two. But I think if I had to, I absolutely had to, I would pick Daisy Jones and the Six over Crescent City 3, because House of Flame and Shadow wasn't my favorite of this sort of Crescent City bunch. And I liked it. I devoured it, considering it's such a hefty book. But at the same time, I really wasn't expecting to love Daisy Jones as much as I did. And then I found that I really, really, really enjoyed it. And so it kind of edged out Crescent City. In March, I actually didn't have any 5-star reads. I had 2 4-star reads though, and that was Throne of the Fallen and Malibu Rising. I read Malibu Rising because I was such a fan of Daisy Jones and the Six, and they're by the same author, kind of in the same, they call it the Readverse because it's Taylor Jenkins Reid, the author. And so again, Malibu Rising is sort of historical fiction, whereas Throne of the Fallen was fantasy. And I liked Throne of the Fallen, but I have read, in my opinion, better fantasy, and so I think that Malibu Rising beat it out a little bit. But that being said, I didn't like either of those more than I liked Crescent City 3, so I'm going to pop Crescent City 3 into the winner slot because it was still a 5-star read, and I think it deserves the spot over those other 2. I read so much in April, and a lot of the books that I did read got 4 stars. I didn't give any of the books in April 5 stars, but that's okay. We can go with a 4-star one for this one. So there's actually 6 books to choose from. The first one being Yellowface, second Graceling, which is the first one in the Graceling series, Six of Crows, and Crooked Kingdom. I read both of those on holiday, The Atlas Six, and The Wishing Game. So lots and lots of books in there, and I think of those 6, I feel like Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom kind of beat everything else out. I really liked those as a sort of heist fantasy sort of realm, and if I had to pick between the two, which I don't think I really can. I feel like they're in the same vein. I think I will pick Six of Crows just because it is the first of the series rather than Crooked Kingdom being the second of the duology. And I actually don't have a 5-star one to replace it this time, so we are just going to pop it in there. In May, I only had one 5-star read, and it was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, another Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and I absolutely freaking loved this. I wasn't expecting to love it so much. Like, I'd heard great things about it, but I didn't think it was my sort of thing, and then when I listened to it in audiobook, I was so gripped by it, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it to pretty much anyone. It's another sort of historical fiction, documentary style, going through the different husbands of Evelyn Hugo and sort of her whole romantic history. And it was just such a surprise that I wasn't really expecting. But I thoroughly enjoyed Taylor Jenkins Reid this year. I'd never read her before, and I'm really glad that I was able to get into her this year and read a lot of her universe. In June, I actually read 2 5-star books that I now have to choose between, and again, it's really hard because it's like picking through apples and oranges, one of which was Lightlark, a sort of fantasy competition style book, and the other was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is a YA crime thriller mystery book. And to be honest, I devoured both of these. I really, really enjoyed them, and I find it really hard to pick between. So I think I'm gonna have to go with Lightlark just because fantasy beats it out ever so slightly. I just enjoy fantasy slightly more, and I think it makes more sense. So I'm gonna pop Lightlark in the spot. But I think there's some months later down the line where I only have 4-star reads, so maybe A Good Girl's Guide to Murder can come back and beat out some of those. Actually, July is one of those months. I didn't have any 5-star reads, but I had 3 4-star reads. Godkiller, The Jasad Heir, and Carrie Soto is Back, another Readverse book. And I liked Carrie Soto is Back, but I don't really care about tennis all that much, so it's not going to win between the 3 of those. But between Godkiller and The Jasad Heir, I thought they were both fantastic books, and I really want to see what happens in both of those series. They're more fantasy style, but I think between the 2, I'll have to pick The Jasad Heir, and I don't think A Good Girl's Guide to Murder will beat that out yet. I guess I'll just put this here for now, and I can change it if I want down the line, but I think there's another month. I think in September I didn't read all that much. So August, there was only one 5-star read, and it was Nightbane, the sequel to Lightlark, and I, again, thoroughly enjoyed it. I just read it so freaking quickly that I loved it so much, and it had just as much of the sort of surprises as Lightlark did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. In September, we only had 2 4-star reads, which were When the Moon Hatched and One Dark Window. One Dark Window being a sort of gothic, dark fantasy, whereas When the Moon Hatched was more sort of like, not saga necessarily. I think it's part of a moon saga or something, but I feel like it was a little bit more lighthearted, and I feel like I could get behind it a little bit more than One Dark Window. I read the sequel to One Dark Window as well, and I didn't like it as much, and I think that tainted my view a little bit. Whereas I met the author of When the Moon Hatched, and my copy is now signed, and I feel like that just kind of raises it up in my sort of estimations. So of those 2, I think When the Moon Hatched definitely beats out. But I think the question is then which of these I liked The Good Girl's Guide to Murder more. You know what? I'll put it in here because the October book that I liked the best, there was only one 5-star read, and it was As Good as Dead, which is the, I think the finale of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And so if I pop that in there and I put A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I can judge the 2 of those. It's more like judging like with like as opposed to fantasy versus crime thriller. So let me pop these in. That's going to be a hard choice, though. The, first versus the finale of a series. Oh, good. That'll be fun. In November, we have another Holly Jackson, and it was actually the only 5-star read from November. It is Five Survive, which is not part of the same series as the Good Girl series, but again, very, very good. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, just because I thought it was part of the same series, and then it turned out not to be, but in the end, I couldn't stop listening to it, and I listened to it so quickly because I really wanted to know what happened. And then in December, I didn't have any 5-star reads, but I had 2 4-star reads, and they were Funny Story by Emily Henry. I feel like that was one of the biggest romance novels of the year, as well as Zodiac Academy 1, Ruthless Fae. And I think between the two, while I did really, really like Funny Story and I listened to it very quickly, I think I'm gonna have to put Zodiac Academy in front of it, just because while it wasn't my favorite, I think it's getting me into a series that I absolutely know is going to destroy me. And so while it's not got 5 stars, I think it can definitely compete in this sort of realm. I think now we're getting into the hard part where I'm having to pick between 2 books that I really liked throughout the year. So between King of Battle and Blood and Daisy Jones and the Six. Oh, that is a tough one. Again, it's like comparing 2 totally separate things. I think I'm going to have to pick Daisy Jones and the Six, just because I think I enjoyed it more and it opened up a bit more of possibility for my reading. And it was like trying something new and very unexpected, so pop that in. The next competition is House of Flame and Shadow, so Crescent City 3 versus Six of Crows. And I mean, going between a 5-star read and a 4-star read, I feel like it's pretty obvious that Crescent City is going to beat out. But then again, that puts Crescent City against Daisy Jones, which is absolutely fine. So we just know what this spot's going to be. It's going to be Daisy Jones. And I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm happy with that being the result of these 4 under competition. So Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo versus Lightlark. I think I'm going to have to go Lightlark. I think fantasy just beats out in this particular section. I absolutely love Lightlark, and while I loved Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo as well, Lightlark just holds a place in my heart. And then again, a 4-star versus a 5-star, so Jessadair versus Nightbane. I think Nightbane's gonna have to pull through on this one, and that makes for a really interesting next round, putting the first versus the second book in a series, which I thoroughly enjoy. That's going to be a hard decision. So this one, oh my goodness, this is going to be difficult. A Good Girl's Lied to Murder versus As Good as Dead. So the first versus the third, I think, in the series, the third and final. And in this case, I think because you end up loving the characters so much by the time you get to As Good as Dead, I'm going to have to say that it pulls through. And then the last one here is Five Survive versus Zodiac Academy. And this sounds really weird, but while Five Survive got 5 stars and Zodiac Academy got 4, I think now that I've read more of Zodiac Academy since then, I kind of want to raise this one up, just because I know I love the series so much now. I've not read all of it, I'm still in the process of it, but I just love the series so much, and I feel like it deserves maybe not 5 stars, but I think it beats out Five Survive, in my opinion. That's really weird. I should have given it 5 stars. I don't know why I didn't necessarily, but it feels like that makes the most sense. Okay, so we already know that Daisy Jones beats out Crescent City. Oh gosh, and then we have Lightlark versus Nightbane, which is 1 versus 2 in a series. I did really, really like them both, and I know with the Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, I picked the first one as the beginner because I couldn't pick between the two really. I think Nightbane just narrowly beats out Lightlark. And what's a big shame is that the third in the series, Skyshade, didn't even make this list. It wasn't even on the list of 4 and 5 star reads. I gave it a 3 stars, which is pretty crazy. So Nightbane, I think, is what's gonna pull forward. And then we have As Good as Dead versus the Zodiac Academy, The Awakening. I think between the two, because I've not finished the series yet, I think I'm gonna have to say As Good as Dead, just because it was a fantastic book, and I think it deserves to beat out Zodiac Academy for now. Maybe later books in the Zodiac Academy would beat it, but the first one doesn't. Oh gosh, top 3. Now I have to pick between these 3 to get my top slot book. And it is really, really hard. They're so different. They're just 3 different genres: historical fiction, fantasy, and murder mystery, thriller, YA. Oh my goodness. They're almost not comparable. So also, interesting enough, I listened to both of these and I physically read that one. I don't think if I had listened to Nightbane, I would have liked it as much. But I also think that if I physically read either of these, I wouldn't have liked it as much too. So I really liked it in the format it was. I think that was really important. So I think I'm gonna nix out As Good as Dead. And then so we're between Nightbane and Daisy Jones. And I think very, very, very narrowly, Nightbane is going to rule out, just because it was such a good one. And I'm totally going to be getting a physical copy of this book as soon as it comes out in paperback. I really want the box set of it because I love Lightlark as well so much. But I have to say, if I'm going with favorite audiobook of the year, it would be Daisy Jones. I think this is a very good honorable mention, second place. So Nightbane is the ultimate winner of my 2024 book bracket. And to be honest, I'm not surprised about that. I had a feeling it was going to be one of these two. I think even if Lightlark was in there, it would have beat these two as well. So I feel like the middle of the year was a really good reading time for me, because I read such good books during this time, and Nightbane just ruled out overall. So that is it. That is my 2024 book bracket. I actually really enjoyed doing these, and I think it's quite cute to have a little like stickered up thing here. It's quite fun. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some inspiration for your reading in this, and that you've found some cool books that you could potentially read going forward. I highly recommend the Lightlark Nightbane series. Like I said, even though the third book isn't as on par with, I think, the other ones, who knows where the series will go, and maybe it will continue to get better again. But there's a lot in here that I highly recommend you read. They're just all pretty phenomenal books, and I would recommend every single one of these to someone else. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up down below, and also, based off of my reading, if you have any recommendations for me, I would absolutely appreciate them. I'm always looking for more books to add to my TBR, so pop them down below, especially audiobooks as well. I've kind of not run out of audiobooks, but I need some more. I need some more recs, because I read a lot this past year and I want to keep that up. And I've kind of read the sort of like main ones already. And usually I tend to read or listen to mystery thrillers, crime stuff, biographies and memoirs, contemporary stuff, and contemporary romance on audiobook, whereas I pretty much almost exclusively read fantasy in physical book form. So, I mean, all recommendations very much appreciated. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!